Hi everyone, welcome to Onefootball live with me, Max Merrill, and Ollie Moody.
Hello, good evening.
Hope you're all doing well. We've had a pretty exciting week of Champions League action. Pretty average Premier League weekend last weekend, but we've got a cracking one coming up next. Plus, we're going to preview those big games that we're all waiting for, and we've got a rather special guest. I've heard, can't believe this, according to my notes, Ronaldo was here.
Ronaldo, Max.
Ronaldo's coming? I don't know. I mean, you seem to know more about this than me. Yeah, I think you're hiding something. You know something I don't.
Yeah. Me?
But this guy's been taking the in-depth look at Cristiano Ronaldo, seeing if that man could make it to the big 4-0. He's made it past 30 2 years ago, and he's won a couple of trophies since then.
One or two, a couple of individual honours as well, but who's counting? One
of them with the little handles, or two of them with the handles, and done well with Portugal as well, where he's sort of trumped Messi. You know.
Who's interested in it? Really, Max. Like, no one cares about trophies. And
Messi's made it to the World Cup, hasn't he?
Messi has made it to the World Cup, yeah. Well, will Ronaldo join in there? We've still got to find out. He's still at the playoff, hasn't he?
Yeah, that's true, actually. That's true. Maybe it will all be the other way around. I've got my trusty laptop here that I've plastered through with all sorts of weird stickers. If you guys want to get in touch with us, obviously, just get into the chat. You can talk to us. I can see loads of people already commenting. How you doing, guys? Dima is saying, whoop, whoop. Thank you very, Dima. Pirate Pokemon. Pretty good name, actually.
Like it.
We're going to keep an eye out for your name. So if you've got a good YouTube name, give us a shout. And you can ask us any questions, anything you want us to talk about. Obviously, just let us know in the comments, or your opinions. We always want to balance your opinions. We've got a Manchester United fan in myself here, and an Arsenal fan to my left. So you might want to get some other opinions into the mix once we start talking about those teams. So let us know what you think. Vikas, whose name I mispronounced before, I think. I still need to know exactly how to pronounce it. But he's saying, I'm very excited for this, as I was there in your last 2 live streams. I remember you being there. I remember a lot of you guys being there. Always Mr. Keeper Cat saying Manchester United is the best. So we're obviously friends.
Here we go. This again.
Leonardo saying Rome is the best. Well, we'll be talking about Conte later on. Let's talk a little bit already. We're going to get more in depth about this later.
Hang on, Max. I'm going to interrupt you just quickly here because there's something I want to talk about. You just said you're a Man United fan, but he also just said that last weekend was a bit rubbish. Didn't Man United beat Tottenham last weekend? Is that not good anymore? Does that not count? I mean,
it was great. I thought it was great.
Real Madrid destroyed us.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, we've technically beaten Real,
kind of. Yeah.
But although we lost to them earlier on in the season, but. No, I was saying for the general football fan. I was trying to take the bigger picture. Ale Paris says Elian Schneider. He's obviously keen on PSG. Pirate Pokemon Go is saying I'm a Hudders fan, lads. Well, Huddersfield, nice little outfit. Do you think
poor result of the weekend, but good season so far, eh?
That's very true. That's very true. You have to see the grand scheme of things. Yeah. Eskill17 is asking, do you think Arsenal will win today? What do you think, Ollie?
Yeah, at home, I think in the Europa League.
Who do they play?
It's Red Star Belgrade. Is the team, Max. Big European team. Actually.
Oh yeah, institution.
I'll have you know.
Used to be in the Champions League, just like Arsenal.
Back in the good old days. That was a while ago, wasn't it? No, I think Arsenal will get the win tonight, and I think Arsenal will, if I'm right, if my maths is right anyway, which is never a certain thing, will qualify from the group stage from that, and without really playing many of the big players at any point in the group stage. So I think Arsenal will be comfortable tonight. Okay, well, a Spurs fan, Harris, he's saying, being completely honest, it was an amazing shift and an absolutely brilliant game. That's the 3-1 he's talking about. He was also there last time. Thanks for joining us again, Harris. We will talk about Spurs as well. Mr. Harry Kane, of course. Will he or won't he Real Madrid? They're already sending out the signals, although if you lose to his team, then it's not really setting him up for a move. But let's talk. We will talk about Tottenham. It'll pain you to say it, but they're doing rather well. Oh, Max, don't make me do it. Don't.
Yeah.
Yes, they are doing rather well, aren't they? They are rather good at the moment, unfortunately.
We've got a few Arsenal fans here. Vlad is an Arsenal fan. We've also got quite a lot of United fans. Johnny Skills, I recognise you. You've been there before. Let's talk a little about last Sunday, as it often is called, Super Sunday.
Yep.
By a maybe reputable, maybe not so reputable sports organisation.
What are you insinuating?
I don't know. Super Sunday was Leicester against Everton.
Oof, big game.
Brighton against Southampton. Woohoo! Yeah. Anthony's getting excited.
Yeah, okay. No, I see your point, Max. Those are not really the superest of Sundays, are they?
This Sunday,
yep.
It's Manchester City against Arsenal.
Okay.
And Chelsea against Manchester United. That'll be a bit better, won't it?
Okay, so we've got two English footballing institutions there in Arsenal and Manchester United, and two kind of, nouveau riche, haven't really done much in English football teams in City and Chelsea. That's about the size of it, Max.
I like where you're going with this.
I think that's a good description of the weekend, personally. No, we're definitely going to talk a lot more about those two games, of course. Huge matches on Sunday this weekend. And it's going to be an interesting weekend of Premier League football. You could see the gap between teams at the top of the table extend, or quite the opposite. That's what the great thing about these weekends, when you've got 4 teams out of the top 5, I think it is, all playing against each other.
Tottenham are playing against Everton on that day as well, so they're another team in that top area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Tottenham playing at home.
They're playing against Crystal Palace.
Okay,
it's Everton who are playing Watford on that. That is a real Super Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Tottenham, Crystal Palace, early on in the day. Then you got Everton, Watford. I really like Watford this season.
Mm-hmm. I don't. For obvious reasons.
City and Arsenal playing, and then in Chelsea and Man United. I mean, it's a really, really exciting weekend for football, and we will preview that thoroughly in the coming hour. We will be looking towards Cristiano Ronaldo in just a moment. Our resident footballing expert, Oliver Moody.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Giving us the lowdown on Cristiano Ronaldo, whether he will be at fighting fit condition at 40. I was trying to get some Fs in there. Didn't quite.
Fighting fit at 40. Yeah, you almost made it, Max. It was good. It was a good effort. There's a couple of Fs for you.
And then there's a surprise appearance. I mean, I'm reading it here. I can't quite believe it. Anthony's been telling me the whole night. He's getting excited that Cristiano Ronaldo will be sitting in this couch.
I can't understand that. He's got to be pulling our legs here.
He's got to be pulling our legs, but he's adamant. He's adamant it's true. So stay tuned for that.
All right. We'll see.
Let's see what's going on in the comments. Lillian thinking Man United did great last weekend and on Tuesday. Yeah, Tuesday, some called it a lacklustre performance. They are qualified pretty much for the group stage. City are the best. We're going to talk about City later on as well. Umid, he said he couldn't get to sleep last night. We beat Real Madrid.
Well, you can understand him, can't you? Is
that
their biggest ever win in Europe?
Probably, yeah. I mean,
it's got to be, hasn't it?
It was a great time. I remember the games against Inter Milan where Bale really burst on the scene. Those were great games for other reasons.
And Inter were the Champions League title holders at the time, then, I think, as well.
I believe so,
That was a poor season that Inter had. That season under, was it Benitez? I think it was.
Yeah. Well, Umid goes on to say he can see a few similarities between the Klopp Dortmund team that got to the Champions League final. And made the Champions League final. And the current Tottenham team.
Well, Dortmund did lose that final, so you might not want to make too many comparisons there.
Well, we will talk about Tottenham later, their title credentials, what kind of season they've been having, and some of their big stars, Harry Kane and Dele Alli, of course,
What about the coach? Pochettino.
We will have to talk about
Pochettino. Biggest star of them all.
Fantastic coach. I really like him, really rate him. But first, let's have a little look at what this man had to say earlier today about Cristiano Ronaldo. You are here with us live now, but I believe earlier on.
That's absolutely right, Max. I was preparing something for you all back at home. Look, Cristiano Ronaldo, world star of the game, recently named the best player in the world by FIFA at these ridiculously named the best awards, as though a 2-year-old came up with the title or something like that. Named the best player in the world, and it's not the first time, is it? Let's be honest. Is it? I've lost count of how many of these individual awards he's won. But look, the guy is an absolute megastar of the game, and if you look at the complete package, he's bigger than Messi. I'm not saying he's a better football player than Messi before anyone gets too upset about that, but the whole package is, I think he's a bigger player than Messi, and that's why I think he'll go on until he's 40. If you want more details, what can people do, Max?
Well, they can not only subscribe, but they can watch now, because we're going to see all the reasons why Ronaldo will be still playing at the top level when he's 40.
They say a player's prime ends at... They say a player's prime ends at 30, but when we're talking about the king of football in this particular day and age of sports science, that rule simply no longer applies. Cristiano Ronaldo already had a bulging resume by the time he reached 30, but in the 2 years since, he's won another 2 Champions Leagues, 1 Spanish title, and the European Championship with Portugal. So defenders around the world, beware. If he wants, and he likely does, CR7 could join Paolo Maldini, Javier Zanetti, and Teddy Sheringham and play into his 40s. We're going to tell you why based on his brawn, his brains, and just how bloody badly this guy wants to break every record in the book that he doesn't already own. Remember that skinny kid who arrived at Manchester United back in 2003? Well, he got a lot bigger. Ronaldo's ripped torso is hardly a secret, mostly because the man himself loves nothing more than tearing his shirt off for the cameras. But it's not just for show. That muscle-bound frame is a huge part of his success, and it's going to be the driving force that carries him towards middle age. The forward has a famously intense training regime that, even when measured against modern pro standards, stands in a league of its own. Aside from pitch-based sessions keeping him in tune with his teammates, the 32-year-old pours hours upon extra hours every day, fine-tuning his own engine. It's about core strength, plyometrics and sprint training, incredibly detailed routines that aid performance, but just as importantly, help protect against injuries. There's more to it than just working out. Everything, absolutely everything in Ronaldo's life is geared towards fitness and performance. Clearly he learned a few things from his old teammate Ryan Giggs, who himself retired at age 40. Ronaldo eats up to 6 meals a day to keep his energy levels high, and his diet is tightly controlled. He's even had his own personal chef since he was a teenager. No fast food for Ronaldo, instead it's all fish, vegetables and whole grain carbs. And unlike some players who like a cheeky smoke now and then, we're looking at you, Wayne, Ronaldo doesn't go near cigarettes, and he won't touch a drop of alcohol. And it's not just his waking hours that count. More recently, CR7 has managed to take all this preparation to a whole new level by employing his own personal sleep coach. It turns out the man who performs best over 90 minutes also naps for 90 minutes during the day. Oh, and no posting workout photos on Instagram at bedtime. The sleep coach has banned Cristiano from exposing himself to his phone's artificial light and will actually tell Real Madrid management which hotels have the best beds for the prince to sleep in. Ronaldo's preparation alone makes a good case for him to last into his late 30s. But even being uber fit won't stop the physical decline completely. That's where Ronaldo's genius on the pitch comes into particularly sharp focus. The Portuguese forward started out as the trickiest winger in town and a show pony to boot. But Ronaldo has always been one of the most success-driven players in the world. And as his career has gone on, he's added more strings to his bow. In Manchester, he learned that he needed strength as well as skills. He built that famous body and became a major threat in the air. And at Real Madrid, Ronaldo has developed a style that could see him play for as long as he wants. He was smart enough to know that herring up and down the wing and running at fullbacks all day is a young man's game. That's why Ronaldo has increasingly focused on set pieces, refining his trademark free kick technique. In the 2015-16 season, he scored an incredible 9 League and Champions League goals from set pieces alone. But even more important is the acute positional sense he's cultivated. He's become one of the game's great goal poachers, knowing exactly where to go to give himself the best chance of scoring. Basically, he doesn't need to run as much, and instinct doesn't get old. With his intelligent adaptations, Ronaldo could play right up to his 40th birthday. But there's another element that will keep Ronaldo on clubs' wanted lists for years to come. Brand CR7. Quite simply, Cristiano sells. No player in the history of the game has attracted the kind of attention that Ronaldo does. He's got 113 million Instagram followers. That's 30 million more than Neymar and Leo Messi. In fact, only Selena Gomez and Ariana Grande have more than Cristiano. Ronaldo has a lifetime sponsorship deal with Nike, with analysis company Hookit rating his worth to the company at $500 million a year, just from his social media posts. That is mega business for his club. Even if the goals dry up and Real Madrid drop him, there will no doubt be another big club waiting to sign him, because he's the world's most marketable player by a distance. So there's the case laid out, Cristiano's path to 40 and beyond. We say it's paved with a fanatical approach to preparation, incredible talent, underrated smarts, and a drive that will take him down a road that only a select few have ever dreamed of taking. And we didn't even mention that he'd rather die than leave centre stage before Leo Messi. Are we right or talking shite? Subscribe and tell us what you think.
Okay. Well, Ollie, quite a lot of reasons why he could make it into that 40 club. I mean, there is a lot of high-profile players that precede him there. Del Piero, Giggs, Totti, Zanetti, you know.
Exactly, yeah. You've got other examples of players who have done it. And to be honest with you, I struggled to narrow the number of reasons down. I could talk for hours on why Ronaldo could, keep on going. His mentality, aside from anything else. You've got to think this is a guy who won his first league title, 10 years ago, coming up for 10 years ago. His first Ballon d'Or title, I think, was 2008, or FIFA World Player of the Year, whatever it was back then. So he's a guy who has been at the top of the world game for almost a decade, and his hunger is still as big as it ever was. He's still so desperate for success. And when you've got that kind of mentality, I don't think that dies. I don't think that burns out, especially with a guy like Ronaldo who's got so many other things kind of going for him. So there are hundreds of reasons why Ronaldo could keep going.
And one reason you mentioned was his physical, his unbelievable physical regimen that he has, and the way he has perfected his body and guarded himself from injuries. Remember, this is a player who gets injured. No, he doesn't get injured a lot, but gets fouled a lot.
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of knocks, all that stuff, really tough, thing to take on your body. It takes its toll. He does a lot to combat that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's smart. It's not just about pumping iron or whatever. He's not just about building that body up just to look good, although I think that is obviously a factor for him as well. He does a lot of work specifically to avoid injuries, and that's smart because he knew from a very young age. I mean, when he was that tricky winger that everybody wanted to put 2 feet through in the Premier League, he knew from that day on he was going to get fouled a lot in his career, and he knew he was going to have to do a lot of work to stop himself getting those really nasty injuries. And you can see these pictures here. I mean, look at the legs on him, for God's sake.
Unreal.
Like, there's a reason he's got those, and it's not just for the Instagram posts,
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned two things there that I want to get to. One being his fitness. Has there ever been a player as fit as him? Because we see those pictures. You point out that looks ridiculous, and the food regimen he has. Is there any other footballer you can think of who has come close?
I can't think of a player that I've read about where it's not just about the fitness regimen in terms of going to the gym and working out and whatnot, but it takes in so many different facets. I mentioned the sleep coach there, the diet, the not drinking, all that kind of thing. There are so many different aspects to Ronaldo keeping himself healthy and fit. I've never read about another player who's so dedicated from that point of view. There have been other players who have not drunk throughout their careers, Thierry Henry and players like that. Players who have been very, very careful with themselves, but the sheer extremes that Ronaldo takes it to, and it seems to have got more extreme as his career has gone on, which is also kind of smart because you can get away with a bit more when you're young. When you get into your 30s, a lot of players do suddenly, their bodies start to break down a bit then. Ronaldo, I mean, look, luck comes into it as well, because things like a hernia or a knee injury, those are things that can happen to anyone just through a dodgy landing or, sort of standing up the wrong way even.
But he's minimising that risk.
He's minimising that risk, so it's certainly not all luck. There's a lot of thinking that's going into that too. I can't think of a player that I've ever seen or ever read about or what have you who has been as fit as Cristiano Ronaldo.
Well, and he's benefited from being in an era where that's being taken more and more seriously,
sure.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Before we go on, I just want to remind you guys, let us know in the comments what you think. Will Ronaldo be playing at 40? If he's still playing at 40, where will he be playing at 40? That's something I want to discuss next. Mm-hmm. Just before we get to that, though, I mean, you mentioned earlier on, something that I think is very true, is he recognised from a very early age that he could be the best. Now, there's stories of him at Carrington arriving and thinking he was the bee's knees, and then people sort of pushing him down and saying, look, you've got to work. And he took that to heart. Many young players will be arrogant.
Sure.
I'm thinking of a player, Memphis Depay, who came to United with big reputation, big legs.
There's a long list. There's a long list of players who thought they were going to be the best and haven't done it.
And do you think that arrogance, do you need that to an extent to be that good?
Yeah, I think to be as good as he is, I think you do need a certain level of arrogance. And I think Leo Messi, for example, is another player who has it. It's just much quieter than Ronaldo's. Ronaldo's a bit more flamboyant. And he's got a bit more sort of flair about his looks and whatnot. I do think you need that just to believe that you can be the best. There's a great story that one of Ronaldo's coaches at Manchester United told from early during his time at Man United, before he'd really become a massive star, where this coach said he wanted to be the best. He wanted to win the Player of the Year, the Premier League Player of the Year award. And the coach said to him, you'll need 2 years to get there. And he said 1 year. And he did it. So that's the thing. It's not just about having that arrogance. It's about actually backing it up. It's about knowing what your limits are and knowing how far you can push yourself over a certain space of time. And Ronaldo had the dedication and still has the dedication, but also the awareness of like what he's actually capable of, you know. And that's what sets him apart from some of the players that you've been talking about there, like a Memphis Depay, who's turned up, thinks he's going to be the best player in the league, and then after one season, you know, gets sort of flown out. Ronaldo turned up and after a couple of seasons said, I am going to be the best player in this league. And he went out and did it. That is so important, because otherwise that arrogance starts to look very, very silly.
Yeah, of course. And you've got to back it up with work. And that's something I think which he benefited from by going to not Manchester United, you could say, generally speaking, going to another culture.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, under Sir Alex Ferguson, that's a manager who really, I think, helped him so much. And he credits Ferguson with a lot of where he is at now in his career.
Yeah, rightly so as well.
Let's go to some of the people in the comments here. Daniel Wyman, he says the closest sports person in terms of regimen is Djokovic. Now, he's someone who does get injured a lot. I mean, again, genetics comes into this as well, luck, as Ollie said. But there are players in other sports who are getting closer, and I think this generation of athletes is going to be more perfected.
You mentioned, exactly. You mentioned that nowadays people take things like diet and, you know, taking care of themselves more seriously. You hear all the stories about the old days, and especially in English football, where the players would, you know, eat a steak before playing a game. And then,
Tony Adams,
exactly, and then knock back a load of beers afterwards or whatever. And there was no one doing yoga or whatever. There was no one who had a sleep coach. All these kind of things that now are becoming standard. You know, Ronaldo, to some extent, was a bit of a pioneer from that front. For doing it so young, I think a lot of players at some point in their career start to take these big and then these more extreme steps. Ronaldo got his own chef when he was 19.
Yeah.
Like his own personal chef when he was 19. For someone of that age, and the level of ability that he already had, to see, I could be even better if I take this step. That is a sign of what's carried him so far in his career already, and will carry him through, I think, as I say, into his 40s.
He probably also got bored of curry and chips, to be fair. But
Mancunian diet is brilliant, Max.
Mr. Keeper Cat, appreciate your comment. He says, everyone like Onefootball. If you can, of course, subscribe. Get more YouTube content every single day from this man, from me, from all of us here at Onefootball. And Lillian has a question, Messi or Ronaldo? Well, I'm going to give it a really short answer. Personally, Ronaldo. For me, he's done it in different leagues. He's done it in different positions. For me, it's Ronaldo. I appreciate Messi and his wonderful talent, though, as well. I don't know if you want to tackle that.
All right. This is a difficult one. I think Ronaldo is the most all-round player that we've ever seen in world football, without a doubt. But in terms of entertainment, in terms of who I love watching the most, Messi, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, split decision here. That's good. That keeps it interesting.
Yeah. We want to know what you think then.
Yeah, let us know, guys. Messi or Ronaldo. You're going to have to be careful, though, because in a few moments, I'm hearing Mr. Cristiano Ronaldo will be in the building. Zach versus Zach says, who gives a Let's talk about last night's unbelievable Champions League games. We will get there. We're going to talk Spurs specifically. Manchester United, Manchester City, great games. Chelsea, not so great. Especially City, you know, that was an exciting game as well.
Sure,
but
yeah.
Spurs, for me, the game of the evening, really. So we will talk about that, Zach versus Zach. I don't know if there's a split personality situation going on. These are our talking points later on. You can, of course, let us know in the comments if there's anything else you want us to talk about. Somebody has already been asking if we can see PSG winning the Champions League. So
you can see on your screen there at the moment, well, you could,
if you were quick.
We're going to be talking about a few of the big teams at the top. City as well, who, of course, have got a big game this weekend. There we go again.
Yeah.
Can United catch City, for example? Some of the managers who were, perhaps either jobless at the moment or teetering on the brink of joblessness. We'll be discussing that too. But we'll be going very big on Spurs as well after their win over Real Madrid.
Definitely. But now I think security is alerting me to the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo might just be in the building. So I think
is this really happening?
I don't know. I'm trembling. I'm very, very intrigued to see what this is about. Let's have a look what Cristiano Ronaldo has to say.
Now, esteemed Onefootball viewers, you may notice I've kicked Max off the couch here, and that is because I have the honour, nay, the privilege of introducing the great Cristiano Ronaldo. Cristiano, welcome to the show.
Cheers, Ollie. How are you doing?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yourself?
Very good, very good. At the goal yesterday against Tottenham, very good.
Lovely to have you here. Can I ask, why are you here? To what do we owe this honour?
Well, you know, I love Onefootball. It's my favorite app to watch the football, and I want to promote my new shirt. I have it under my Real Madrid shirt right now, ladies, so keep the panties on.
Can we see this new shirt?
Yes, man. You want to see it now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm
Everyone
just going to take off my Real shirt and wave it around like I scored a goal.
Oh,
hey, here we go.
At that.
Yeah, you see this? This is my six-pack on a shirt. So, for all you guys and gals out there who want to have the shirt, you can look like Cristiano just by putting on this shirt.
I have to say, you're looking in very good shape there. Lovely six-pack and arms, you know, hench as usual, ripped as usual.
Thank you, Ollie.
What's going on with your arm?
Just putting my arm here, you know, it's okay.
All right, yeah, okay. I'll keep an eye on that. Your English is very good, Cristiano. When did you learn English?
Oh, I went to Manchester United in 2003. Greatest football club aside from Real Madrid. My father in football, Sir Alex Ferguson, he helped me English. He has very strange English. Oh, Scotland, oh.
So you speak Glaswegian Manc Portuguese now, do you?
Yes.
Lovely. Marvellous, marvellous.
Oh, wait, no. I.
And was it easy learning English? Was it hard? How do you find it with
as easy as taking off my shirt.
Well, you certainly seem to do that with ease, Cristiano.
Yes.
I have to ask though, because you know you were recently named World Player of the Year or the Best Player of the Year by FIFA.
Of course.
Of course. How did you feel about that?
Well, it's a great honor. Every time I'm named it, every time they don't give it to me, it's a great mistake. I'm a very good footballer, the best of all time. I think you know this too, Ollie.
Absolutely, of course.
And you know, there's really no competition right now for me.
You say that, Cristiano, but your recent form hasn't been great, has it? You've not been scoring as many goals. What's happened there?
Well, I think my form right now speaks for itself. I scored yesterday against Tottenham. It was a bad game for my teammates, but I scored. I was making the runs into channels. Harry Kane has got nothing on me. He didn't score. I scored.
Okay, fair enough. And as long as Cristiano scores, that's all that matters, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Exactly. On the note of recent form, though, how do you feel about Leo Messi's recent form?
It makes me sick, Ollie. Makes me very sick. You've got to clean that up.
Are you feeling okay?
A little bit hot now, a little bit sweaty. Let me just do this for a second. Oh, just gonna cool down.
That's better. That's better.
Just wave it around like I just don't care. hey, ladies.
Beautiful, huh? That's what the Onefootball viewers come here for, you know.
Of course.
But you didn't actually give me an answer there. So, how do you feel about Leo Messi?
I don't feel good about him, you know, because he pretends to be the best, but I'm the best.
Okay, well, you need to get a cleaner in here pretty soon, Cristiano. But okay, one last question: what's going to happen with Real Madrid this season?
You cheeky monkey! I didn't do that.
This guy.
Real Madrid this season. Well, I will score the goals. The rest must come from my teammates. You know, I think at the moment it's not going so well for my teammates. I'm doing very well. We'll probably win the Champions League again. Maybe not the Spanish title, but who cares?
Okay. And I have to say, Cristiano, one last touch. I do like your earrings.
Oh, yes, they're very shiny.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they? You know,
absolutely.
As long as you've got the bling and as long as you've got the six-pack and as long as you're scoring goals.
Six-pack right here,
there it is again. See, that's all that matters, right? Forget form or forget Real Madrid winning or anything like that. Cristiano's got it all.
Yeah, got it all. Thanks, Ollie.
Thanks you, Cristiano. You know the craziest thing about that interview, Max? Ronaldo's accent. I had no idea he spent time in the Netherlands, you know, but he's really picked up the Dutch-English kind of accent there. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think sometimes Portuguese and Dutch aren't that far away when they speak English.
You think? You can tell he's a linguist, can't you? This knowledge that he has of languages is really quite incredible. It's very impressive. He's an impressive man, Max.
He is,
much like Cristiano Ronaldo.
And he showed us.
We're very happy to have on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting in his hallowed seat. While I was sitting over there doing my best Dutch accent.
Exactly.
We will talk about many things in our talking points very soon. We're going to be talking all about this weekend's coming action and taking a look back at yesterday and the day before even, where
Champions League.
A lot of teams were doing well. Chelsea weren't one of them, but Tottenham, what a performance. Tonight, Arsenal playing as well. So we've got a lot of action to preview and a lot of things to talk back and review. But just before we move on, let's talk about Ronaldo for a second. A lot of people in the chat here saying Ronaldo. A few Messi. Usually there is a split, isn't there? Yeah. Tarun saying, whoa, that was wild. Don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Could go either way. That
Pirate Pokemon was saying he is fake.
What? No.
That was not
he was
clearly
right
Ronaldo.
Here.
He was right. You saw him.
He touched my knee.
You know, I was on the loo.
He was he was somewhere else. Yeah.
Somewhere else. Tarun actually, he says James Rodriguez played so much better in Bayern than with you. Obviously directing this to Ronaldo.
Cristiano was sitting in that seat.
He was sitting in this seat. Clearly a fan of Onefootball. Subscribe. Now, it's interesting that Tarun mentions that because yesterday Ronaldo said after the game that he thinks he didn't kiss Messi. He didn't kiss Messi, although you might believe it from that subscribe graphic. Now, Ronaldo said after the game it was a mistake to get rid of Morata, Pepe, and James.
Yep.
Now, just to give everyone a little background, this summer Real Madrid signed a few players, but they sold big. They sold They made over 124 million euros. They made a transfer surplus of 77 million euros, the biggest in their history. Usually they're in the negative or they're breaking even or something like that. Now we've seen a little trend at Real Madrid where they sort of clear out the dead wood in the last few years because they know they can get a pretty penny. Mesut Ozil being an example, for instance, Angel Di Maria being another example. What do you think? Pepe, James, Morata, good players.
Of the lot, you would probably say Pepe was the one who was perhaps getting to get to that stage where he's past his peak. But he was still such an experienced player. He was one of those players who just knows how to shithouse his way through a game. He knows how to just be an absolute bastard, basically, to get the team through difficult games. James didn't have the best of times, I don't think, at Real. And there were a lot of players in that position. With Asensio coming through, I can kind of understand why they let James go. Morata, I do think is a kind of crazy one. I mean, he's such a good player. He's so talented, and Benzema is a good player, but he's not the youngest anymore. I think Morata, they had a young, homegrown, talented forward coming through, and I don't really get why they sold him. I know they make good money off of him. The only way I can justify it to myself is if they're going big on a striker in the coming summer.
It is strange, I think, because, also, you mentioned earlier on Ronaldo's adapting his game. Maybe he's going more and more into that striker's position, especially if Benzema's time comes to an end. But Benzema just signed a new contract, so that kind of goes against that thought. I do think selling Morata, yes, they made a lot of money. I think it was 70 million or something around that ballpark figure. But how much do you have to spend to get a player of that caliber? And he's a Spanish player who grew up at Real Madrid in the academy. What more could you want as a fan? Yeah. And as a club boss? No,
I don't get it at all. I think Morata was the perfect player to be playing that kind of not bit part role, but also not quite first choice role.
Well, and he could have become first choice, as you mentioned, Benzema getting older.
With a bit more time. Didn't seem like the sort of player to kick up a fuss either. It seemed like the sort of player would be happy just as long as he was involved in the team because he was homegrown. I really cannot understand that one. As I say, unless they were going big for a player. But as you say, the whole landscape of the transfer market has changed in the post Neymar era. That big 222 million euro deal has basically changed, has moved the goalposts in terms of transfers for every other player now. And 70 million almost looks like small change for a club of Real Madrid's size when you're talking about players who are that good. And so, I'm not really sure that they can get a replacement who's as good or better for the same kind of money.
Yeah, I mean, and it sort of reminds me a bit of Morientes, who was a similar player in terms of he was a great Spanish player who came through the Madrid academy and then was sort of spurned. And as you rightly point out, with Neymar, for instance, this transfer happened before Neymar, I think, wasn't it?
I think so.
And now we're in the post-Neymar ridiculous transfer figure world. 70 million looks a snip for someone like Morata.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Everything has gone everything has doubled basically when you get a certain quality of player. When you look at some of the deals that like Everton made, for example, this summer, 40 odd million on Gylfi Sigurdsson. You know, that's really a sign that we're in a new era of the transfer window. And so I'm really surprised by the Morata one. And I think, you know, from Ronaldo's point of view, Real aren't scoring nearly as many goals as Barcelona at the moment, for example. Maybe having someone else to take the goal-scoring load off of him would actually help Ronaldo, and it would help kind of take defenders away from him as well to allow him to, you know, get a bit more space and get more chances in front of goal too. It's
interesting in that list that Ronaldo is talking about, Pepe, James and Morata. He didn't mention Danilo, who also left this summer. And Danilo, for me, was a player who could have been really useful for Real Madrid for two reasons. One, he could have played at right back yesterday because Carvajal is injured. We had Hakimi, who did an all right job, I think, going forward. Going back, maybe not so much. Now, first of all, Danilo could have played there. Last season, he played 25 games. The season before, roughly around 30, that as well. So he was actually getting game time, and he was a good standard. He can play on the left as well. Instead, Real Madrid chose to buy Theo Hernandez in the summer. But Marcelo rarely gets injured and is pretty much the first name on the team sheet after, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo.
After Ronaldo himself, it's interesting. I mean, when you look at the players that Ronaldo named, you've got a couple of attackers in there, and then Pepe, who was his mate from international football, international duty, you know. So I wonder if that maybe is a reason why, you know, he's thinking about James, he's thinking about Morata from the point of view of players who can maybe take a bit of the load off him, players who can help him out. James, a creator a lot of the time. You know, Morata, someone who, as I said, can drag defenders away from him, perhaps does a lot of the donkey work, a lot of the hard work, you know, up front, and then his pal, you know, and maybe that's why he's missed Danilo's name out. Also, you know, he gets a microphone shoved in front of his face. You can't expect him to remember every player. Yeah.
Probably. Maybe we're reading too much into it. Well, we've had Tarun saying Real suck now. Insult Project says Zidane has to play the young new guys. Insult Project, also a very interesting YouTube name. Procyon Wave says hi, Ollie.
Hey.
Hi, Procyon.
How you doing?
Wave. Don't know how that is. Mr. Keeper Cat keeps drumming up the likes for us. I'm very pleased about that.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to move on. Let's talk about this weekend and preview the action and have a little look back at what to watch for. We can first start off, I think, talking about the team of the moment.
Who's that?
Tottenham Hotspur.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay.
I kind of wanted you to say because you're an Arsenal fan, but I don't think you. I wasn't
going to give you that, no.
Now, a lot of questions we can ask about Spurs. First of all, what a great win against Real Madrid on Wednesday. A great result. I mean, fantastic to see Dele Alli was, of course, not involved in the first 3 Champions League games because he was sitting a ban in a previous Europa League campaign. Sure. He was back with a bang. And
a couple of goals against Real Madrid.
Harry Kane not on the score sheet, but you know he's always a good player for Spurs. First question we have, and this goes out to you guys as well in the comments: can Spurs win the title?
Win the title, Max? Do you mean the Premier League title? Are we talking about here?
Well, let's go win a title then.
All right, yeah.
Or first off, Premier League title, yes or no?
Premier League title for me, no. They're already 8 points behind City, and how many points realistically do you see Man City dropping this season?
Oh well.
Not many, right?
We'll talk a bit more about that later, but I'm looking very concerned.
Right. And on top of that, Spurs, I mean, they're starting to pick up at home now. They've won their last couple of home games, I think. Thrashed Liverpool, obviously, and beat Bournemouth, was it, as well, I think, for their first home wins of the season, in the league at least. But I think they're already too far behind, and I'm not convinced, actually, that they've sorted out their Wembley hoodoo in the league to, you know, enough to string together a long run of victories. Mauricio Pochettino, though, is by far and away the best thing that's happened to Tottenham in the last God knows how many years. Obviously, Harry Kane would be another name on that list, but I think Pochettino has given Tottenham the style and the discipline to actually play this kind of football, and to play the kind of football that will allow Kane to score lots of goals and Ali to score lots of goals and Eriksen to create, and he's got that solid defence combined with a really good creative attack. For me, Pochettino is the big star at Tottenham, and I think not only can Tottenham win a title, I think they need to win a title. Well, they need to win a trophy of some kind. I mean, playing all the pretty football you like is great, but remember, I'm an Arsenal fan, the banter era, right? Almost a decade without winning a trophy, and we were told time and time and time again that was the reason that we couldn't keep big players. It was something that was just never going to end, and it does eventually become a psychological thing. Tottenham lost in the semi-finals of the FA Cup last year, right? They've finished second and third, I think, in the last 2 Premier League seasons. So there's a lot of like bridesmaid sort of status in there with Tottenham at the moment. And I feel like they need to actually get across the line and prove they can do it to cement this kind of reputation that they're building with their good football. Well, Procyon Wave wants to know next if Spurs can win the Champions League title. But let's first address what you're saying. We did say, can they win a title? Mm-hmm. Now, in the League Cup, he fielded not a B side, not a second 11, but he didn't send out his strongest guys. Perfectly understandable from my point of view. But they didn't really look like they wanted it. And the League Cup, for me, would have been an ideal title to win. Funnily enough, and now just not because I'm a Manchester United supporter, but for instance, Mourinho, he always likes doing well in the League Cup because many argue that it sets you up for more titles. And also just it gets you silverware. You can say, we've won a trophy as a team in the dressing room. It sounds good, doesn't it? You can say you won a treble last season. Yeah, but you know what I mean? And it can put you into that winning mentality. You're in a final, high-pressure environment, Wembley. And you think about the fact that Spurs, yes, they have a Wembley hoodoo, but they're going to play there more and more. Yeah. They could have reached the League Cup final, and it's essentially a home game at that point. If they've sort of banished the hoodoo a bit more, it looks like it's going a little bit, and they're getting used to playing there. It's a shame that they didn't take that opportunity. In fairness, after I don't know what it was, 30, 40 minutes of the game, something like that, when they were 2-0 up at home to West Ham, you would have thought, well, that's in the bag. And so really, I think it's more a case of the players just kind of losing their heads a little bit. And West Ham, of course, let's not take anything away from them. A great comeback, a great performance to score 3 against Tottenham, against whoever's playing in this Tottenham team. They're so well drilled. To score 3 against that team is a big achievement. So, firstly, well done to West Ham. I do think it is a bit disappointing for Tottenham. I've seen a few people saying they've got bigger fish to fry. They haven't won a trophy in almost a decade. I feel like you're saying, it can be a springboard to further success. It can be what gives you that winner's mentality and whatnot. I think Tottenham, that's why I say they need to win a title of some kind. They need to win a trophy of some kind to actually prove that they can do it. Because for all the pretty football in the world, if you're not winning trophies, ultimately a lot of players are going to leave, and you're not going to be remembered in the same way as teams that have won things. Yeah, I mean, and you don't retire as a footballer saying, "Oh, I won against Real Madrid that one time, scored loads of good goals, but won nothing." Yeah. Well, John says Manchester United will win the trophy, but he says Spurs could win a trophy like the FA Cup, for instance. We do have, for instance, Andrew, who's a Spurs fan, self-confessed. He says if Manchester City lose, then Spurs have a chance. That's something we'll talk about a little bit later as well. I mean, a few people here saying Spurs can't win the title. Let's talk about the Champions League then, because that's a knockout competition. Sure. And yesterday they seemed to prove that they can beat anyone. Yeah, you would think so with this win over Real Madrid. But we have, as I mentioned earlier, sort of been here before with Tottenham when they hammered Inter that time. Made it through to I think it was the quarterfinals of the Champions League that year. There was a lot of talk then about how Tottenham had become a big European team with a couple of those performances. They need to actually get a bit further this time. To beat Real Madrid is a huge thing for them, and it is the sort of win that can make you feel like a big European club. But this is a Real Madrid team that's struggling a bit so far this season. They are, I think, 8 points off the pace in La Liga. They're 8 points behind Barcelona. They're not scoring goals like they were towards the end of last season, or even right at the beginning of this season. You remember the Super Cup, European and Spanish Super Cups, where Real Madrid just looked fantastic. Their form has kind of dropped off a cliff a little bit since then. They got beaten by Girona at the weekend, right? Yeah. So it's a huge result for Spurs, massive. But there are other teams around Europe who are in better form at the moment, who will give Spurs a different kind of challenge. They've got to do it against a couple of clubs, but this is definitely a team that can win a trophy in terms of their quality. You know, when you look at Ali banging in a couple of goals yesterday, Son has started the season really well. Kane, of course, after that little dip at the start of the season, his traditional kind of August dry spell, is on great form again. They've got a solid back line. They've got a great keeper in Lloris. So in terms of quality, it's all there. It's about the mentality now.
Well, we'll move on to another little talking about Spurs. I just want to address something. Giallorossi Calcio, he says, can AS Roma get some love?
Yes.
Italian teams finally need to get some praise in the Champions League. Not the inevitable insert English team performed poorly against them. Thanks and love the show. Well, very true, Giallorossi Calcio. We have Juventus, who've been doing well in the Champions League for years, and Roma, who I'm very pleased to say have done really well.
Sure.
We will talk a bit more about Chelsea later when we talk about Conte and AS Roma, but a fantastic performance from them.
Brilliant, absolutely. They just sort of swept Chelsea away, didn't they? And was it their third goal? I think when Checo took 3 Chelsea defenders with him and then turned them all with one move. And the runner was in massive space. I forget who it was now, but it was in huge space on the other side.
Sharabi, I think, for the goal.
It was a third goal.
Oh right, okay.
But yeah, and it was just this beautiful move, this run and move from Checo, and so a lot of love certainly from that point of view.
Well, we have a Procyon Wave also saying about Spurs. He says maybe if they get lucky in the draw along the way, anything's possible. They beat Real Madrid. Yes, I know Real aren't doing too well, but further to that idea, if they could win the Champions League, they could conceivably do it if they make Wembley a fortress, I think, and if they get a little bit lucky with who they're playing. But in the Champions League, at the end of the day, you're going to have to face the biggest teams.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, at some point in the Champions League, you are going to have to play the best teams around.
Well, let's talk about the fact, if they don't win the Champions League, if they don't win the Premier League, if they don't win the FA Cup, and they haven't won the League Cup, they're out of that, can they convince Harry Kane and Pochettino to stay? Because those two, I mean, you can maybe throw Dele Alli into that mix, maybe Alderweireld and Vertonghen, but really, at the core, Spurs, if they can keep Pochettino and Kane, a team around that can be built.
Yeah, sure. I think Pochettino especially. I think Kane seems like the sort of guy who might actually, have real feeling for the club and might not actually be desperate to get a move to a place where he's going to win. He's going to be guaranteed more trophies or whatever. He does seem like a player who's got real affinity, and I know there are not very many of those kind of players in the modern game, but maybe, just maybe, Kane is that sort of player and will continue banging in the goals for Tottenham. For me, the big one is Pochettino. I said earlier on in the show that I think he is the real star of that team, of that club at the moment. The discipline that he's instilled in them, the way he's got his players drilled in their positions. So it almost doesn't matter who plays. They lost Kyle Walker in the summer. Kieran Trippier's come in and been absolutely phenomenal for Tottenham this season. He was brilliant against Real Madrid last night as well. Set up at least one of the goals, didn't he? And Trippier.
What a performance from him!
Exactly, yeah, and that's a sign of, to me, because Trippier a couple of years ago was not considered, a great prospect in football. He was, certainly seemed like a good player, but not like a player who could switch it on against Real Madrid like that. And I think a lot of that is down to Pochettino. He's turned players who perhaps were kind of underperforming before, or were not, certainly not at the level that they've been playing at in the last 2 or 3 seasons, and he's just pushed them on to the next level. You look at Eriksen in midfield, you look at Son out on the left, you look at Alderweireld, Vertonghen at the back. Davinson Sanchez has come in the summer, all right, for a lot of money, but a very young player, and he fits them like a glove, And it's not just the quality of the player, I think it's just how well Pochettino sets them up, how well he tells them exactly what their role is, what they need to be doing, without kind of being too overbearing, still giving them, players like Kane, for example, the freedom that they need.
Well, I think one thing as well that is really crucial, those players staying. We saw in the summer, Kyle Walker leaving. We knew kind of at the end of last season that there was a movement in the offing. He had sort of fallen out with Pochettino. He was on the bench a lot. Then we had suddenly Danny Rose out of nowhere making noises like he wanted to leave, and it looked like it was all about to crumble. With wins like this against Real, and if they then take this on and maybe win a title like the FA Cup, or do really well in the league, or get far, maybe to the semis in the Champions League, I think that's what will convince certain players like Eriksen, not like Kane, who's sort of ingrained in the club. Yeah. Other players like Alderweireld and Vertonghen, Vertonghen, I think he's approaching 30. That they might think, my family's settled in London, all that. But it's the players like Ali, Eriksen, and maybe Kane that you have to watch out with. Dyer as well. You have to watch out for those players, because they could think, I don't want to wait.
And that's why they need to actually win a trophy soon. They need to prove to those players that they can actually get across the line, because some of them will stick around regardless of what happens. Some of them will not. Some of them will need success in the form of trophies, cups that you actually lift at the end of the season, to convince them that Tottenham is the right place for them for the rest of their careers.
Now, Adumatube wants to just ask a quick question about the Golden Boy. Now, he wants to know what kind of player can win it. I mean, in the running, I think Mbappe won last year. Someone like Gabriel Jesus could win it.
Yeah,
do you have any? Or Pulisic? I mean, there's a lot of young players doing really well. Do you have anyone you can think of maybe of those? Or anyone else you want to throw into the ring?
Well, Gabriel Jesus has had an incredible year at Man City. I saw a stat the other day that he's been at City, or he's been playing at City for a year, and he's never actually lost.
Wow!
Like when he's been in the team.
That's incredible.
Which is pretty stunning. But I think if you look around Europe, there's a few on the go at the moment. You could look at Timo Werner at RB Leipzig, who had an absolute breakthrough season last year, was just brilliant. You could look at someone like Donnarumma at AC Milan, who is phenomenal for a keeper of his age. There's hardly any keepers in the history of the game who have been that good at that age. And so there are a lot of players out there. Pulisic, you mentioned, who I think he's still got a little way to go. I think the potential there is massive, but he's still got a couple of steps that he needs to take, and the experience he's getting at Dortmund will do that.
Yeah, especially if you've got someone like Jesus and Rashford in the running as well, who made the 3-man shortlist last year.
Yeah.
Let's move on then to our next topic. We're going to talk about management furnace. There's a lot of changes that could be in the offing, and 4 managers in particular that we want to talk about. 2 who have got a job and 2 who haven't got a job. Let's start with Antonio Conte.
Yep.
And we can kind of piggyback on what we were talking about at Roma the other day. Not the other day.
A few minutes ago.
A few minutes ago, yeah. I mean, Roma played well. That's no discredit to Roma, but defensively they didn't look right, Conte. And we've seen this sometimes with managers who've played a solid 11 through one season, won the title, and then the next year they start getting trigger happy. And he's been dabbling with all sorts of combinations in back three. He has had injuries and suspensions, Cahill, for instance, being one at the start of the season. So he has had to rotate. But he doesn't really seem happy. He doesn't really seem set on who he wants to play when.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Well, I remember Conte a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, saying that there's a hunger problem at Chelsea. And it is kind of interesting because, we saw when Mourinho was last at Chelsea that they had that brilliant season where they won the league. And then the next season, it just all fell apart. And a lot of people were saying it was just the kind of guy that Mourinho is, that he kind of pushed the players too far and whatnot. But you've got to wonder now, is this a thing with some of the players at Chelsea that they win a trophy or they win the league, and then the next season they kind of coast a little bit? That's kind of how it looks at the moment. Hazard, I think, has only scored once. I think he opened his account last weekend. And
he was one who struggled in that second season when Mourinho, after they won the title, So exactly. Again, the same players. Fabregas got sent off really early in the season for a very, very silly 2 yellow cards in quick succession. It looks like, kind of deja vu, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they, of course, Diego Costa was another one who was a bit of a sort of problem child in Mourinho's last season at Chelsea, and of course didn't appear for them at all this season, despite not being sold within the transfer window. He's still, gone to Atleti. Sometimes I think when you have these great systems as well, it works for a season, and then you get it with individual players as well. They kind of get found out. People know where the weaknesses are. They know where to sort of pick holes. And I just wonder if that's happening a little bit with Chelsea at the moment too.
Well, and you mentioned Diego Costa, the player that replaced him, Alvaro Morata, very good player, but he doesn't have the same sort of aggression and bite.
Exactly,
and when you faced Chelsea and you knew Costa was going to be there,
you knew you were getting stamped on, you were getting elbows in the ribs and all this kind of thing. I think Morata seems like a nice boy. I don't think he's going to be he's sort of digging elbows into people, giving people shit for 90 minutes. I think that's very much Diego Costa's kind of neck of the woods.
Yeah. Tony Cascarino, I was reading about him in the Times the other day. He was saying that when he was a younger player and someone fell over or something, he'd help them up. But then after a while, he would not help them up anymore because he knew that the defender wouldn't do the same for him.
No, sure.
And maybe Morata just needs to develop that bite a little bit.
Like,
not everyone has to be a Diego Costa.
A little bit of a nasty streak. It doesn't have to be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be Diego Costa sort of levels. But if
it all goes wrong,
just develop that a little bit, that would be good.
Yeah, and if it all goes wrong, this man here,
Carlo,
who's been to Chelsea before and was somewhat unfairly dismissed after winning the FA Cup and finishing second in the league. Not a bad return, really.
Yeah.
He could go back to Chelsea. I mean, we've got Tuchel as well, who's out of a job. I don't see him necessarily going to Chelsea, although there are vacancies, Everton being one at the moment. They probably need a high-profile coach. They can't settle for someone second rate. But let's talk then about Ancelotti first.
Well, although we've just seen this man come up on the screen, Jurgen Klopp, I wonder if Tuchel might replace him, as he did at Dortmund. I think that's more a Tuchel kind of club than Chelsea is.
Yeah.
So I feel like if Tuchel is going to take a job in England soon, I feel like it's more likely to be on the red side of Merseyside than Everton or Chelsea. But Ancelotti, you mentioned, I would not be massively surprised if things don't go well for Chelsea in the next few weeks, and they may not because they've got a couple of really big games. Ancelotti might be the answer in kind of the role that Gus Hiddink has played for Chelsea in the past, where he's come in just as an interim coach and sort of stabilise things. I think Ancelotti's quite good at that, just sort of playing sort of simple football that the players understand, and just sort of getting teams through difficult stages. I feel like he's quite a good boss from that point of view. Conte. Chelsea in the next couple of weeks. Now, obviously, this weekend they've got Manchester United, which is, of course, a big game. Chelsea's sort of directly below Manchester United, or sorry, 2 places below Manchester United in the league at the moment. And so, obviously,
it's important for them to keep
exactly. It's a chance to reel Manchester United in a little bit and not lose any more pace with City. But if it doesn't happen, then, and especially Mourinho coming back to Chelsea, if he wins there, if Lukaku scores at Stamford Bridge, when Chelsea at the start of the summer thought they were getting Lukaku back, that will not feel good for Abramovich, and if it doesn't feel good for Abramovich, it's not good for Conte.
Well, I'm looking forward to that as a Manchester United supporter. Let us know what you think will happen in that game at the weekend. Let us know what you think will happen in all the games in the weekends. There's lots of big fixtures coming up. Now, let's talk about then this weekend could be a big one for the title race. At the moment, there are many teams that could win the title, but realistically, City are the favourites.
Sure.
Looking at it from from the points and the goals scored, and the meanest defence, I believe, is still Manchester United. So we have the opposite end of the table there in terms of goals scored, goals against. They are very much have very different strengths. Can United catch City? What do you think? What do you think,
Max? I'm really sorry, mate, but it's not going to happen.
This
is City's season. Look at that team. They got goal difference of plus 29 or something incredible like that already this season. They've been hammering teams. They've been absolutely playing them off the park. But they've had a few difficult games as well. West Brom, for example, where West Brom came back and they really had to hold on at the end. City there to win 3-2, but they did it. They can do it. They can grind out victories as well. And so I think City have got it all going for them this season. They've managed to get the likes of Sterling, Sané, Silva all playing together and linking up well. And they've managed to integrate Aguero with Gabriel Jesus, which looked like a very difficult thing to do. 2 players who are good enough to be the number one at a top club, and both want to be number one, obviously, especially Aguero with his experience and number of goals he scored. I think he's City's record goal scorer now in the Premier League. He's managed to get them playing together at times as well.
Well,
I can't see anyone catching them.
It's very depressing to me to kind of agree with you there, because City just look unbelievably strong. They're looking all right.
Max, come on, put up a fight.
They're looking all right defensively. All right, though. They're not looking great. And that is the only hope that I still have. Elian Schneider says Manchester United can catch up. He still believes. I still believe as well.
It's the hope that dies
Tarun
last.
says United will catch City. I think it's possible, not probable. The defence is the key. If City can start leaking goals, they leaked 2 against West Brom on the weekend.
Yeah, but I think
if they can start leaking goals,
season.
and then maybe you get an injury to Jesus and Aguero at the same time. That's a sweet spot. Now, just before we go,
pure optimism.
Yeah, well, injuries. Somebody, if you see him, just
me.
Don't trip any of the City players up. Before we go, we want to take you through 3 players: overrated, underrated, and properly rated. So let us know in the comments as well. We're going to be going through 3 players. So let's start off with a guy who often is told he is described as overrated, sometimes also saying he's underrated. He's a great fullback, Kyle Walker, who moved from Tottenham for £50 million to City. Now, let's take away the price tag, because the price tag is ridiculous. But what do you think? Overrated, underrated? Is he properly rated? What would you say?
I think Kyle Walker is a very good fullback. I think he's a little bit overrated though, because he's a good attacking fullback, I think. And in the system that Pochettino had, he was all right defensively because he was part of a unit that functioned really well together. And I think this about a couple of the Tottenham players that Tottenham as a team generally is more than the sum of its parts. And I think Kyle Walker is a good example of that. A very good player, but not as good quite as he looked for a couple of seasons for Spurs. So good, but a little bit overrated.
Okay, well, Taryn agrees with you. Overrated. I think
Taryn's right.
He's somewhere between overrated. I think he's properly rated. I think he's a good fullback. I mean, the price tag is nuts. But we don't even have to talk about that price tag. Let's move on to 2 of your favourites, I'm sure, as an Arsenal player.
Yep.
Jack Wilshere and Mesut Ozil, often discussed as overrated, underrated, properly rated. Wilshere, what do you think?
Let's start with Wilshere, shall we? You know what? A few years ago, or even maybe like 2 years ago, I would have said Wilshere was a bit overrated. But I think he's dropped off a lot of people's radars in the last couple of years. After the sort of first half season at Bournemouth, where he was decent, he had a poor second half of the season. Now he's back at Arsenal, barely getting a game. And I think he's actually moved down to some, maybe slightly underrated even. If he could I feel like if he could get a decent run of games in the right team, he could still be a good player. But he's unfortunately not going to be the player that we all hoped that he would be after we saw that first breakthrough season that he had at Arsenal, I
like the optimism. I think he's sometimes overrated in terms of what people talk about him when he's injured. You need to put games together. And when people talk about him playing for England again, for instance, or getting into the Arsenal team, he didn't look great at Bournemouth. Yes, it wasn't a perfect situation for him maybe, but the best players make a good,
make the best of a bad situation. Yeah.
Now, for me, he's someone who it'd be very sad to see him tail off after such a promising start to the career. He's not a Tom Cleverley, but I think Tom Cleverley, the difference is he can carve himself out a nice career at a sort of mid-table club. I don't know how well Wilshere would do at a mid-table club. Maybe he'd have to go to Spain or something to do something.
Yeah, his mentality, with Wilshere, he's trying to be Steven Gerrard with everything that he does, and he needs to just go back to the basics a little bit and keep it simple.
We've got 1 minute.
1 minute.
Mesut Ozil, overrated, underrated, properly rated. What do you say? What do you guys say in the comments? A lot of people saying Wilshere is underrated. What do you say about Ozil?
Ozil, on any given match day, could be any one of those 3. I think a lot of the time he's underrated. People criticise him unfairly. I think sometimes when he has a really good game, he's overrated and people act like he's, sort of Leo Messi. And sometimes he's properly rated. When he gets a string of assists or whatever, or bangs in a couple of goals, people talk about him in the terms that he actually should be seen. He's a very good player who sometimes goes missing.
Well, there you have it. I'm not sure, but I mean, as I said to a friend of mine the other day, to an Arsenal fan, Mesut Ozil on a free in the summer for United. Yeah, that'd be all right. That'd be all right. Stick him on the bench, bring him on for a few of the smaller games. I think he's not a big game player based on so far. He does really well for Germany. He did really well for Real Madrid. At Arsenal,
I thought you said we only have 1 minute.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it at there, guys. Thank you so much for joining us for the Onefootball Live. We'll be back again many times in the future. This has become a weekly thing. And thank you so much, Ollie, for joining me.
Thank you, Max.
We've had a great time with you guys. Thanks for all the comments. Peter Gerd says Ozil has bug eyes, and Beastie Gaming says he's properly rated. That's sort of here. Loads of people saying properly rated, but we can agree he has got rather big eyes. Thanks for joining us, guys. See you next time.